Hello everyone, today I bring to you a game that's called Game 4 from the World Championship being played in Dubai between Magnus Carlsen, the world reigning chess champion for many years now, and he's only 31, happens to be his birthday on November 30th, 2021. This is the same day that the Game 4th occurred, versus Jan Nepomniachtchi, who's from Russia. And Magnus again is Norwegian. So I'm sure Norway is very proud. Anyway, so here I go. I'm going to give you my rendition of I see this game. I For the beginners in chess, just letting you know, there's a big opening theory, there's an opening phase of the game, the middle game, and also the end game. So the game is divided just like a book, the beginning, middle, and end. The beginning is basically openings that are usually memorized, and they can be arranged from a few moves to many. And sometimes they have names. A lot of times they have names, especially after somebody used it a lot and it's a good opening, meaning it can give you an advantage. But after a few moves, there's millions and millions of possibilities. So, it's a fine line between learning and opening, and then there's a point where you have to sink or swim. You are on your own. Theory is not going to help you because you're in the deep, deep, dark forest, as the one of the famous players had said before, and it basically becomes skill of intuition, many different skills that come into play. Okay, and so there's different kinds of styles of play, just like we have handwriting. It's different for everybody. Even though you write an A, I write an A, but that the way we write the A is different. We can both understand that it's an A, but the way we write our signatures, our handwriting style is different. The same with chess. So there are certain preferences, and we'll see how this game went. My objective is to show you the game and how I see it. Other places you can see a lot more theory, a lot more this could have been, that could have been. That would be a totally different game, wouldn't it? So I'm just going to concentrate on this game and this game only. All right, so this is game 4 of the World Championship in Dubai 2021, held on Magnus Carlsen's birthday, which is November 30th, 2021. So we started with e4, e5. That's a standard opening. Then knight to f3, knight f6. That is called the Petrov defense. That's a Russian defense. Jan Nepomniachtchi is Russian, so he probably is fairly familiar with the defense. Defense is what the black will do from a white offense. And let's look at this a little bit. So both are eyeing their pawns. This white knight is eyeing right away, attacking the black pawn, while the black knight is attacking the white pawn. So there are different choices here and different variations, different lines, and you have your choice. And those variations and lines are studied, and theory is created from that study. And so let's see what choice was made here. Well, the knight takes on e5, neutralizes that control of the center. And what will black do? How will it respond? Okay, it does not take the pawn, but it creates pressure on the knight. Okay, so that is how black responded. Also opening up the bishops. Noting with this one move, you have the black bishops fairly open. The open line here, and not really an open line here for this black bishop, but we'll see if that changes. Knight to f3, usually that's a loss in tempo. Interesting, loss in tempo, I'm having to move back. What will black do in response? Knight takes on e4. So it's already in the white's corner. It's kind of more aggressive, but is this knight being protected by anybody? Okay, is the knight protected by anybody here from black? Nope. So it's a little risky. Risque. Again, that's the style here that Nepo's choosing, Nepomniachtchi. Sorry about that. So how does he react? He takes on e4. He also neutralizes the control here of the center by white by taking the pawn on e4. Okay, so it's awfully close. Correct? You don't ever want your opponents to be on your side of the board, and this is only the fourth move, so it's kind of scary. But does Magnus Carlsen have a response? Yes, he does. He ignores this threat and creates his own initiative. It is now to put his pawn on d4. Now d4, again, is being protected by the knight. See, by the white knight, it's being protected. So there's the beauty here of Magnus Carlsen. He's able to move and at the same time be protective, meaning there's an initiative, but there's also a defense at the same time. And depending how many of these you can make in consecutive order will determine to me how well you can then dominate the chessboard. And Magnus Carlsen is very good when he's sharp and in form and you know rested and everything. He has just this amazing ability to do this. And let's see what happens next. How will Nepomniachtchi neutralize this? Well, he moves the pawn one up to stop any advancement of the d file here. So he's just saying, okay, this is where we stop. So they're head to head. The d pawns can no longer move. So how are they going to be removed? We shall see. But for now, but put a stake in the ground. So now Magnus moves his bishop to d3. Notice what he's doing. He is attacking the knight. At the same time, the same bishop is being protected by both the queen and this pawn. So he's much harder to get rid of here. So he's now like, I don't like this knight here, basically, and I'm going to attack it. But I'm going to attack you in such a way that I'm still protected. This pawn is protecting this bishop, and so is this queen. Okay, so how will Nepomniachtchi respond? He responds in kind. He moves out his bishop. Now, what does this bishop do? Well, this pawn is still protected by the rook. Alrighty. The knight cannot jump because this space is taken over. It could jump, but it's not. It would be protected by this pawn. I mean, does this bishop do as much as this bishop? Is this bishop attacking anything? Like this bishop moved and was attacking, and at the same time is being protected. All right. So for me, at this point, Magnus is ahead in what he's doing here. So what will happen next? There's castling and there's castling. Okay. Castling is good for both sides. Gives you more protection for the king. So both have taken time to do their castling. Did not give the time for this knight to come here. And maybe Magnus would have been forced to take it with his king. And that would have not allowed him to castle. But it's another time for another story. That did not happen. Next move, another aggressive move, c4, attacking this pawn right away. Is this pawn being protected by anybody? Do you see any black piece protecting the black pawn? No. So Magnus goes for it. So how will Nepo respond? How will he neutralize this threat? Is he able to neutralize this threat? Let's see. He does. By moving the pawn to protect this pawn on d5. Okay. So things are getting more tense. You know, it's like a balloon. It's getting tenser and tenser, pressure. And at some point it breaks. And let's see at what point will things break. And we'll have a breakthrough to go to what side. And who will be able to do it. What is Magnus's next move? Rook to e1. Do you see what's happening here? He's now eyeing this knight. He does not like this knight being so close on his territory. He's still eyeing this knight. And what is Nepo with now his bishop and the rook staring at this knight? Okay, tension is building. So what does Nepomniachtchi do to neutralize this? He quickly protects the knight. So do you see what's happening? This bishop is protecting the knight. So now we're kind of like stopping the threat here. Okay, so what does Magnus do then? Well, I still have another threat. So he's now creating several threats. He's got this threat with the pawn. He's protecting it with the bishop. He's got this threat. So this is doing double duty. He's protecting, and also if it's taken, he's able to take. Okay, so it's quite protected. And this queen move, look at how fast though the queen has moved out. What is it eyeing? It's eyeing this lonely pawn. It's not being protected by anybody. It's its starting position. The bishop has moved out of its place. It's all by itself. So what will Nepomniachtchi do to neutralize this threat? He just moves his queen. So things have not ripped apart yet. There's a lot more tension building. Look at this queen. What a great move for Nepomniachtchi. Very neutralizing move. This is now protected, this pawn, by the queen. So is this bishop protected by the queen. And so is this bishop protected by the queen. Lots of protection here, but just one move by Nepomniachtchi. Okay, so is Carlsen going to take, or she's going to create another threat someplace? How many threats can you take before something breaks? It's like a bull going through the porcelain store. Okay, when is she going to start waving the horns? Okay, let's see. All right, knight is now developed, and we'll look at what the knight is doing. It's still being protected by this pawn, and it's now attacking this pawn, but it's also opening itself up, even though it's attacking this knight. If the knight takes, then he will take most likely, either with the pawn or the queen. Probably the pawn, because he still wants to eye this. We shall see. So another threat being created, although he's being exposed, that this knight will take. Maybe that's what he wants. He wants to entice Nepomniachtchi to get rid of that knight. That seems pretty much bothering him. So let's see what Nepomniachtchi will do. He will take. All right. He will take, but notice, by taking, he just knows that he's going to be taking because it's not threatening anything else right now. Okay, this knight is not threatening anything else. So will Carlsen take this knight with either the pawn or the queen, or will he use this move to go someplace else? Because this is also being attacked. What will he do? What is in most imminent danger? This bishop is not being attacked. Okay? I mean, not being protected. So, I don't know. It's probably worthwhile for him to take. And he does. Because I don't think Magnus likes having unprotected pieces. Which is at the same time is attacking this queen. But if the queen takes the bishop, it is not protected. The bishop is not protected. So that was an interesting move here. It's kind of like a desperado move in a way. Not really, but it feels like one. So he takes. And at the same time, he is now threatening basically nothing here. The knight, which is still protected by this pawn, but it's a pawn that you don't want to move because you'll be exposing your king. And that's it, right? So this is a critical move. Magnus has to create something. What is he going to do? Would I have taken that pawn and then the rook? It just depends what level player you are. Let's see, how will Magnus deal with this? Is he going to fight and create more threats or not? So he takes the knight, the cumbersome knight that was bothering him. But now he's got an interesting pawn structure there. It's getting spicy. Okay, let's look at where the space is. There's space here. Let's see if Nepo's going to create any threats. He goes to b6. Okay, so he's now protecting this pawn that was being attacked by the white queen. All right, so he now changes direction and takes, and then it's taken. So there's some exchanges happening here. Okay, are there going to be any more threats involved here? Okay, so he has he's now going after this pawn on d5. Will there be an exchange of queens or not? Alrighty, let's see what happens next. There's an opening for him to go this way, but that's not really, nope, it's being protected by the knight. Well, anyway, so at least he's advancing, but let's see what the next response will be by black. Wow, direct response to get rid of the queen. So the queen is being attacked, so it's now being protected. It's now being taken. So I guess this was understanding we're going to get rid of the queens. Usually when you get rid of the queens, we are going into the end game, everybody. Into the end game. It's a very kind of precision type of game. It's a very precise type of game. It's almost like a computer is playing this. I hope the love of chess has not been marred by too much computer study. It certainly does not look like a Paul Morphy game. The era where there were no computers, the only computer you had was your brain, and anybody else that could help you out with any tips and ideas. All right, so let's look at this situation. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pawns. 1, 2, 3, 6 pawns. 2 rooks, a knight and a bishop, and knight and a bishop. So what's the positioning? It's very symmetrical here. Let's see what will happen next. Can we create some more threats? Let's see. All right, we are moving down with the advancing with the pawn. Will there be any passed pawns? We shall see. Okay, the knight moves out on the rim, probably going after to attack this bishop with the next move, if it doesn't move. All right, so to prevent that, Nepomniachtchi moves out his pawn, again leaving some space here. So now the knight cannot go after the bishop. Then we go to g4. Wow, quite an advance. You know, jumping over this bishop, so it goes into the white square, so there's an advance here. Also opening up. And again, as long as this king stays on a white square, it should be okay if this bishop can't do anything on a white square. Maybe this knight is too far, maybe it can jump over towards the king's side. We shall see. These pawns hinder this bishop's movements, unless it can actually go here to h6, and then you can figure out something with the knight. But how many moves would you have to move to be able to land here, to be able to create some sort of mating net? Very interesting position. All right, the knight is coming in also. This knight is coming back to reposition. Now we have the rook going after this lonely pawn, which is not protected by anything, which is unusual for Magnus to leave a pawn unprotected. It's high stakes game. Maybe it's his birthday, maybe it wasn't his day. Maybe he's dreaming of sugar and a birthday cake and the celebrations. You know, when you want to celebrate your birthday, your mind's not really on some heavy duty games, or is it? All right, so he's going after the bishop. And again, notice this bishop is protected by this knight, which there was a move right before this. So he like pre-planned this move to be able to do this bishop move. So he takes and takes. Now the bishops are off the board. Oh my goodness. Very symmetrical kind of game. We got just rooks and a knight. And just weirdly positioned pawns. It really looks more like a robot figured this out than a human being. But anyway. All right, we have the rook cutting off the heir to any movements of the pawns at this point. I think a computer would have to figure out how to end this end game. But let's see. So this knight took this pawn, isolated pawn, but at the same time, look at what Magnus is still doing his best, attacking this rook just with that one move. So he just moves out of the way and is attacking that pawn. So Magnus says, oh yeah, I'm going to attack your knight that's not protected. So the knight just moves out of the way. Next, we are moving in towards the king, which at this point is being attacked by this knight, so it's a check. He just moves out of the way, and now the knight is in trouble. He has to move if he wants to save his knight. So the knight does move out. It's being protected by this rook, which is now attacked here. Nepomniachtchi moves his king back. D5. A4. He's trying to figure out a way to get a promotion with that pawn. Okay, the knight moves back. And the king moves back. This is starting to look like a repetition. Okay, the knight moves in. I mean, the pawn moves into g5, trying to find some way to mate. Usually pawns are good, but the pawn won't be able to move at this point. How are you going to get rid of that pawn on g6? Anyways, so he's trying to really get that pawn moving. A3. So Magnus goes to e8, and the king moves, and the knight moves, and the king moves, and the knight moves, king moves, knight moves, and that's how it ended in a draw. Now I suggest you put this into your engine or play with a friend and play several times, see what you would have gotten. Maybe if you make a blunder, or the other party makes a blunder, you could have a win or loss. Somebody wins, another person loses. But this happened to be a draw. When you repeat 3-time repetition, that is a draw. So friends, this is what it looked like. I suggest you continue playing this game to see where you would have gotten. It's good practice. Such endgames are good practice. I just wish people would be back to without using computers and engines, and we'd rely more on our own thinking and our own creativity. Thank you so much. Au revoir. Hit like and subscribe.